solving your problems.
Mm-hmm. You're so right. That creativity it's gonna help people if they can embrace it, because we are in a place of pause and reset. So as we're here, we can choose one of two ways. We can either just become depressed and anxious and put the cover over our faces and just hide, or we can say, you know what, I'm having some extra time now to bring out projects and to create and do things that I've always wanted to do. So I want to encourage people to use this as a time for resetting and to use that imagination to invent witty conventions and inventions so that you can live your best life when this is all over.
And, Dr. Morrow, I like to give tips. One of the things I do also is the technology of the mind. I develop these quick tips for people because psychology and therapy, unfortunately, in a lot of cases is not really affordable for people.
Right.
And there's some quick things that folks can do to help them. And so, even with creativity, if you're kind of stuck, and if you dream, most of us think we don't dream. But there's a lot of power in your dreams. And you can actually write questions down before you go to sleep. I'm sure like your grandmother told you to do this. And it actually really works. Write a question down like, what should I be working on? Or what is it that I'm dreaming about and I can't remember? And put it under your pillow before you go to bed and write about it before you go to bed. And you will have a dream about whatever that message is supposed to be, because the messages, they're inside of us. It's just usually are not accessible, or we can't access them because up until now we've been busy flitting around everywhere. Now we get to be still, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Well, for those of you just joining us, I'm Eric J. Chambers, and this, again, is the Cut Chronicles special edition called Hollywood House Call, The Psychologist, and we were having a technical difficulty just a few moments ago, so if you missed the beginning of the program, it's going to repost right here on Facebook and as well as on YouTube. Again, my guests are Dr. Gloria Chance and Dr. Gloria Morrow. They are two psychologists, and we're going to be talking about issues pertaining to the Black community, especially from the psychological standpoint. Ladies, the psychology in the Black community for many years, it has been a taboo subject. Dr. Morrow, why is that so?
Well, I think it's pretty common that if you have been dealing with a system that has been historically oppressive, it's really difficult to trust that system. And so many things have happened in the Black community. People, would be put in a mental institution if they stole a loaf of bread. So we're talking about a system that has not been very well received in our community for good reason. So we have those things that happen. And then the other thing that has happened, and I love God and I'm a Christian unapologetically, but I think sometimes even in our faith community, we give a message that if a person is dealing with mental health challenges or needing to have help by someone outside the church, that their faith is weak and sin is in their lives. And so all you need to do is pray about it. Well, I believe in prayer, because as Dr. Gloria was talking about putting that dream or vision under your pillow, in addition to that, I will also pray and ask God to show me, what it is he has for me to do. So I believe in that. But if I get sick, you all call 911.
That's right. That is so right.
Well, of course, in the faith base, I'm a believer as well. We all are, but we also must be mindful that God made psychologists and psychiatrists and other, ethnicities use him, and Black people need to use them as well, because there are some things in which your pastor just does not have a finger on the pulse on. He or she may not be trained in that area, and too many times we're dealing with people's advice, and a lot of times it's the wrong advice, Dr. Gloria Chance.
Yeah, think about shame also. Part of it is it's difficult when you're already struggling, things are already hard, and then you're going to turn around and admit that you need help. And for some people, that's very difficult because it comes with stigma and shame. And unfortunately, even for non-Black people, up until recently, it hasn't been, it's been taboo to talk about mental illness and even to admit that you have them. And the reality is that we all need help. We all have different types of mental illnesses, even if it's just stress or temporary depression. And so, I think the one thing that we have to get over additionally to what Dr. Gloria said, and it feels weird saying that, that if we could also get over the shame of, asking for mental help.
Yeah, and people don't realize that depression is a mental illness. Just like you can have a toothache and you can have a neck ache or, whatever else, you can also have a mental ache. I mean, I have them all the time.
Exactly. And, and also when you have the stress ache, talk about how it can actually just kind of blow up into this whole physical thing, because stress impact, comes from initially starts mentally, impacts the body in so many different ways. And that's one of the reasons in our community that we have such a high rate of diabetes and heart disease and high blood pressure, because we carry our trauma in our bodies from through our ancestors. Mm-hmm. That's a lot to carry and a lot to handle, and not knowing how to release it only builds on the problem.
And then when we see the images, as we were talking earlier about what we see in the media, especially with what happened to our people with the lynchings, the dogs, the water hoses, not to mention slavery,
right,
from 401 years ago. And you do that to any group of people, there's going to be some lingering effects, Dr. Morrow.
Yes, and you know what? I was just going to add to what Dr. Gloria was saying. The other piece to that stress that's so frightening right now, COVID-19 feeds on our immune system. And so stress can definitely compromise your immune system. And if we're already compromised, and then we have these other lingering diseases as well, it's explaining why we're having such a horrible outcome with regards to COVID-19. So we've got to be able to talk to somebody. And I want to say this too, while I'm speaking about talking to somebody. You can't talk to everybody. Now, there are a lot of therapists, right, and a lot of people who are, are calling themselves psychologists and, social workers and all kinds of therapists, but you need to interview someone that you work with, because you can get the wrong person and your situation can be worse. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that that you have the opportunity to interview anybody that you're going to spend time with, talking about your deepest, darkest stuff. Because if you get with the wrong person, it can do more harm than good.
Is depression treatable?
Yes, it's a treatable disease.
How so?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I want to go back to what you're saying, Dr. Morrow, because I think that, this concept of we have to own what we need. We have to, even though we're not experts in whatever, therapy or whatever we're seeking, we're experts in ourselves. And if we listen to our intuition, and our spirit, then we are going to know that this person is not working for us. And when something's not working, you have the authority and the power to say, I need someone else. And I don't know if as a Black community, we know that there's a whole network of Black psychologists and therapists that there are links that you can go and look and see. And there's a bunch of us, but most people don't really know that. And so it's important to understand what resources are available, and then to take your individual power to make sure that you get the best service.
It's interesting that you say that, simply because there are a lot of times in which people, when they do have to go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, it may be a person of a different ethnicity. And because of the fact that you are both Black female psychologists, I think that people will be able to realize that you have a greater understanding, perhaps, of some of the social issues that they may be dealing with.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dr.
I was just going to say that's very true, because even when I was in corporate America, and I know a lot of the audience and a lot of us work in corporate America, one of the challenges I had as an executive is they always wanted to give me a coach. And that coach was either white male or white female. And they were lovely people, very educated and helpful, but they didn't understand me. Right. And so there were things that I couldn't either talk about, didn't feel comfortable. And if I did, the advice they would give me would not connect with, the things, the hoops and loops that I needed to go through.
And the other thing we have to make sure, the African American community is so complex. And sometimes we will say, well, they're all alike, and we're not. And so some African Americans may actually do just fine with a white therapist or an Asian therapist or a Latina or Latino therapist. But we have to make sure that we're assessing appropriately and know what we need and be able to say that. You can call your insurance company and tell them, I definitely need an African American therapist that focuses on this, that specializes in this, and they will help you. I think we don't know that we have that type of empowerment to do that. So I want to tell everybody, you get to say who you work with as it relates to therapy, because if not, you may get with the wrong person. There are some great white therapists, by the way, who've done their work.
Right.
They have studied and done what they need to know about diversity and about working with various communities. But for the most part, there's nothing like talking to somebody who understands what you understand and looks like you.
Oh,
Right, who can identify that culture? I understand.
Yeah, and then ask questions. Like, have a list of questions, interview people, and look for things that you need. And when they don't meet the criteria, say no.
That's right.
Awesome. One of the things that a lot of people are dealing with right now, of course, we're shut in right now as we're going through the COVID experience here, is the question is, does social media, does that have an effect on a person's anxiety and their depression? Is that causing it? And of course, a lot of times people are scrolling through and they see another person's profile and it appears to be a gravy train with biscuit wheels, but we know the reality of it, that's the profile, but the real life is different. And sometimes what happens is people will find themselves trying to compare to someone else's life, not knowing that once that person is, say, for instance, off of social media, they're back to their regularly scheduled, boring, or perhaps even depressed life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the 1950s, a psychologist, I can't remember his name right now, wrote about this theory of the lonely crowd. Mm-hmm. And what the lonely crowd basically predicted was that we would have all of these people, sort of together, but alone. And that what it really meant is that we were going to create a life of no meaning. Mm-hmm. And when you have a life that does not have meaning, in other words, you look at everything externally, then you can't build what you need inside of you in order to have something that's meaningful. So you look outside, you're looking at other people and you compare yourself. And that's when you get into danger, because none of us are alike, none of us. And so the depression comes when you look and you have nothing, everything's shallow. And actually the person online that you're looking at all these cool, fabulous things, they probably don't have anything either, because when people, they need to post because they need to say, look at me and see me, I'm fabulous. And for that one moment or however long or how many likes they get, that builds up their ego, but it's momentarily. So it's a vicious cycle for everyone involved, actually.
And there are some psychologists who believe that it can be traced back to childhood, neglect, abuse.
Oh, yeah.
And It may not so much be social media itself, but when you trace all of the linkage back, that could be where it stems from, Dr. Gloria Morrow.
Yeah, social media is just one of the triggers. And when people are fairly healthy, they can kind of take social media with a grain of salt, and they can look at it and move on. But the person who's preoccupied with social media, and another thing that's happening right now, because our government, our national government is saying one thing, our local government is saying something else. There's a lot of confusion about the information we're getting right now. So people
Absolutely.
are trying to find out what's going on, what do I do? So they are focusing more on the news and social media. And they're getting all kinds of things which are making them feel much more anxious. Someone reached out to me just today in my Facebook and said, I'm just so anxious. I don't know what to think, and then with, the death of our two heroes, that just seemed to add to it, because on top of everything else, people are still getting sick. People are still dying. People are still having relationship issues. They're having problems, with finances. So we have two major pandemics, and then we have life. And so people are feeling really anxious, especially when they're focusing on what's happening in the media. So we have to really pull away from it. One of the activities I liked that Dr. Gloria said, we have to have some practical strategies for you. And one of those strategies is to turn that bad boy off, stop being preoccupied with social media, it is not your best source of information. And then secondly, pull away from the news as well. Check in with your local news, because that's going to really focus more on what you need to pay attention to. And
Right.
do that, maybe once a day, and leave it alone. Watch something mindless, do something fun, do something creative. Stay away from that, because if you focus on the past, you're going to be more depressed. If you focus on the future, you're going to be more anxious. So try to focus on the here and now, so that you could be at a greater place of peace.
Yeah, live in the moment, because I myself get deluged with inboxes from people on a daily basis. I use my inbox on Facebook, for instance, for business, but 97% of it is the next police beating, the next person dancing with no clothes on, stuff that I have absolutely no interest in seeing. And so if I don't go through it on a daily basis and knock out, say, for instance, 20, 30 of them, and then when I really need something, then I got to dig even deeper. So it's one of those situations where you have to constantly do it. And I really wish that I don't need to see everything, and even as you said, Dr. Gloria Morrow, about turning it off sometimes. Sometimes that's what I do. In fact, even this morning, what I was doing is I was listening to Christmas music, because every now and then I have to take my mind to a safe place, because if you're constantly just allowing the issues that we have, because let's face it, we're dealing with 4 pandemics in one. We're dealing with the health, the financial, the political, and also we're dealing with the racial. So all of these are coming at us at once, and it's enough to make anybody need to have to call both of you at the same time.
No, for sure. And what I think about also is the fear of the unknown, right? That makes us anxious. And I think you were saying, Dr. Morrow, about, getting away from social media. I mean, the main thing, if you don't want to be anxious, and like you said, Lord knows with everything going on, we're all at our wits' end. However, if you can understand that anxiety happens when you're afraid and get into this overactive mode, one of the ways that you can control, if you can find something you can control, that'll help to relieve your anxiety a little bit, unless it's clinical. But, doing things like Dr. Morrow was talking about, getting off social media and creating, again, things that you can do, but also going to just, that, credible sources. Like instead of local, do local news, but instead of, these national news, go to the CDC if you want CDC information. If you want, health information, go to a hospital site. I mean, go to the source so that you don't have to have someone telling you.
Well, one of the first things that I do when people share information is I look at the byline, at the source. Who is it from? Is it from a credible organization? And then even as a journalist, what I still have to do from time to time is I'll do a quick search. That takes no time. And there are also times in which I've corrected people and told them that, just like in the case with the Representative John Lewis dying last night, last week, there were people posting it, and I did the search, and it wasn't on television, it wasn't on the news, it wasn't in the search engines. And then sometimes, when you tell people, no, this is bogus, and then every now and then I'll have people that get upset. In fact, I tell them, if I were you, I would delete it, whether it be this or something else, because what you're doing is basically you're being a bot for others, when you're perpetuating their foolishness, when you know that it's not true.
I think it's the election coming up now.
It's
really more important to, in some ways, stay off social media, because we'll be, depending on whatever bots they have or whatever processes they're going to use, by the time we become a victim of it, we may have, significantly impacted things negatively, or, it's very dangerous. It's a very dangerous time right now, I think, for all of us. In addition, I think we're in an information pandemic too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, ladies, this past week, there were a couple of things that went down with some of our celebrities. We had the situation with Tamar Braxton on Thursday night, reportedly having an overdose. And then we had a situation the next day with Nick Cannon, getting a lot of negative feedback regarding an apology that he made regarding a statement that apparently he made in the past. And he was even leaving a cryptic kind of post saying that he was tired of basically living on the planet. And so you just didn't know which way that was going to go if you're going to wake up the next morning and hear that Nick is gone. What do you say to people who are dealing with stuff like that, Dr. Gloria Morrow? Because again, people have a tendency to think that even as a celebrity, and all three of us have been around them, and we all three know that it is not a gravy train with biscuit wheels. We all know that they have issues just like everybody else. But unfortunately, sometimes because they live the public life, they have to bear the cross privately, unlike other people.
Mhm. Well, I really felt bad about both of those situations because you're right. They are people. They may be celebrities, but they are still first and foremost people. And we don't know the condition of their mental health because when a person tries to harm themselves, that's not something that just happens overnight. That's something that has had a cumulative effect in their thinking. And so my hope and prayer is that both of them will be able to get some help and to reach out and get credible help. The problem with entertainers is sometimes there's somebody else trying to connect them with somebody to help them and get this done quickly so they can go back to
Right.
what they're doing to keep the money coming for everybody.
Right.
And I just believe I've often sat and watched, and I'm sure Dr. Gloria can attest to this too, and seen our celebrities that are in such trouble and thought to myself, oh my gosh, I wish I could help them, because they need much more help than what they're going to get. And so I'm hopeful that this will be a wake-up call, that they will get the help they need before something tragic does happen. And by the way, when someone wants to hurt themselves, they're going to try. They're going to either try and be unsuccessful or try and be successful. And so that's a sign that that person is dealing with clinical depression and they need to have treatment. They need to be able to deal with those issues that they are dealing with at the time and to get credible help, somebody that's going to walk with them through the journey.
What should a loved one say, Dr. Gloria Chance? What should a loved one or a friend, if you know that, whether it's a celebrity or not, but a person who's going through some mental issues? Because, I know people who are not only in my family, but also friends who've had to deal with it. I've had to deal with it on many occasions, but I have a tendency to continue to look to the hills and try to keep myself occupied and still believing that a brighter day is coming. But that's not the way it is for everyone, because some people unfortunately allow themselves to just fall by the wayside.
Yeah, I would say, as a non-professional, I would feel very guilty if a loved one or a friend said they were gonna or indicated they were gonna hurt themselves and I did nothing. I would feel horrible if they actually executed what they said they were going to do. So I encourage people, if someone that you know and love indicates that they may want to hurt themselves, that you seek help on their behalf. You stay with them, talk to them, try to convince them to go get help, because a lot of times it's a cry for help. A lot of people are, again, the stigma around asking for help. It's real. And so I encourage everyone, do not take it lightly. People do not say to me, especially as a professional, that I want to hurt myself, because you are not going to be going anywhere but to go get help.
That's right.
Because, usually, as Dr. Morrow said, when people want to hurt themselves, they will. And we had, Whitney Houston and a bunch of people. We don't know exactly how sometimes these things come out as overdoses and maybe they're accidental, but we don't really know. And especially in the celebrity world. And the one other thing I'll add is that I believe that every celebrity, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a psychologist, but I believe that every public figure needs mental help. Because there are too many pressures. There are already pressures in life in general, but when you are either an executive or any kind of public figure, the pressure of what you say, what you do, how you do it, everyone's human, and so it's going to impact you in the same way that it would impact an average person.
That's right. Yeah, I want to add to that too. If someone isn't willing to go to get the help, you can always call the non-emergency number of the police department.
Yes.
And they will come and do a safety check. A lot of people don't know what to do if they can't make their adult loved one go to get help. They can't force them to go, but you can call and ask for the police department, the non-emergency number, however, so that they can put together a crisis team, a pet team, or somebody to come out and actually conduct an assessment once they get there. So there is help.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Yeah.
And there are some people who linger in that, say, for instance, depressed state of mind just out of attention, correct?
I say that they can, but I have to say that if somebody is doing that, there is an underlying issue. Nobody who's healthy is going to walk around, saying they're going to kill themselves and going through all of that. I mean, it may be attention, but it's because they are dealing with some type of psychological mental health issue that has not been treated or even identified. So take people seriously. I think when somebody tells you what Maya Angelou says, when someone says who they are, then believe
them the first time. That's right.
Yeah. So if someone tells me, don't tell me that. I tell everybody, don't you tell me that, because I'm going to call.
Exactly.
Okay.
I am calling.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Gloria Chance, you got something you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think, we pretty much said it all. If someone's saying, if they're threatening, take it seriously. Do what you can to be in service to their mental health, to help them get the help that they need.
Absolutely.
And
of course, and then also, what do you say to pastors, for instance, who don't have the background? I personally believe that all churches need to have at least one psychologist on staff, even if it's whether paid or volunteered or whatever the case, because there's a lot of issues that the members go through that are well beyond a pastor's pay grade.
Yes.
And there are a lot of times in which prayer just is not going to be the answer, where you really do need some kind of, psychological counseling, or you might even need some kind of medication because you may be bipolar, or you're dealing with other kinds of psychological issues that your pastor has no idea.
Well, pastors are becoming much more open to this idea. In fact, I just contracted with the Mount Sinai Church in Los Angeles to help them to develop a counseling ministry and, help them to have the structure of that. Because a lot of times you can have people in your church who you refer people for counseling. They may not be licensed. They may not have, legal and ethical things in place. The church may not have what they need to be able to provide those services. So you need somebody to help you to make sure that is structured so that you won't be liable if you do have someone who harms themselves or does something that is going to bring scrutiny on the church. So pastors need to stay in their lane. Excuse me, pastors, I love you, but they need to stay in their lane. If they're not trained in mental health treatment, they need to have right there in their Rolodex, in their phone, a psychologist or some other mental health professional that they can call to help with those psychological needs in their ministry. And they need to pay them. They need to create a budget for it because it's worthy of that. And when people have to give something or pay something, then they take it a lot more seriously. So we have to go past, the volunteer ministry.
Yes.
We have to say, if the servant is worthy of their hire, and if you have someone with these skills to help you in this area, you need to develop a budget. Every church should have a budget for this because in every church, there's someone with a mental illness or mental illnesses. And in fact, the person that gets mad at the pastor because he doesn't go to visit or she doesn't call their name, that could be somebody dealing with, borderline personality disorder. They can be dealing with all kinds of attachment issues. And you need that for your sanity.
It's very dangerous. Yeah, it can also be dangerous. And
dangerous.
So there are legal ramifications to your point, Dr. Morrow. Psychology is actually not a very old field. And, it's been around, maybe less than 100 years.
Absolutely.
And the way that it, if you think about it, there were always physical doctors, which were the medical doctors and who treated the body. And then there's the pastor who treats the spirit. And so really, if you look at the mind, body, spirit equation, then that, for the mind, That's the psychological and the therapeutic, the mental health lane, to your point. And then we have the medical doctors that do the physical, and the pastors the spiritual. So if you look at it that way, it's something that collectively can be very powerful for the individual.
Absolutely.
Again, everybody, I'm Eric J. Chambers. This is the Cut Chronicles, a special edition of it called Hollywood House Call with the psychologists, with Dr. Gloria Morrow and Dr. Gloria Chance. We hope that you're being blessed by the information that we're giving you on this particular day. We just have a few more minutes here before we're going to be getting out of here. But say, for instance, for people who are going through mental issues because of a relationship, they're on the verge of possibly either divorcing someone or getting divorced. How do you deal with them? Because I've been on that old dusty road a couple of times before. And it is no joke. It took every ounce of my being to get through it. But for that person who is perhaps going through that now, or on the verge of perhaps going through it now, or possibly in the future, what do you say to them?
I think that relationships in many ways can be very healing because they become a mirror of who you are. But that to me is the point. You have to know who you are, and you have to be the healthiest part of you, or the healthiest you, in order to have a successful relationship. And so for me, and it's really difficult because there are people who you can really like, but for me, what I'm realizing is I have to have someone who's equally yoked in terms of them doing their work. If they've done their work and they know who they are, because I've done my work, then we have a better chance of having the tools and the understanding of how to get through problems. And so again, if we're talking about being in 4 pandemics and we have all this trauma, from the historical trauma, then we're going to try to add a relationship on it and a family. That's a big burden to carry. So I really think that the tool, the key is, if you're going through it now, see it as an opportunity to learn more about yourself. Spend the time alone, because most of us are afraid to be alone because we're afraid of ourselves. And that's a lot of times why we go into relationship, because we want that support, and who doesn't? But what I've found, especially in this pandemic, is that being alone and really being able to love myself and enjoy myself and learn more about myself and to grow has been one of the best relationships and gifts I've ever had.
Yeah. Same here. I've grown through it. The pandemic actually has been my friend, because I work from home anyhow. It hasn't been that big of a deal to me, but I've been able to get a lot more stuff done. And I'm right now at a beautiful place in my life where, and I'm prayerful that not only I stay there, but I'll continue to stay there. A couple more quick questions before we go. Dr. Morrow, you have a book called Things That Make Men Cry. And there are unfortunately a lot of men who don't cry, but every now and then I do. And then I believe that it is it's like rain for the soul. Just like after a good rain, you feel good, all over again, or the sun will rise again, the sun will shine again. Why is that a taboo subject when it comes to men? Because a lot of times we feel like Sisyphus. We feel like we're going up a mountain with the weight of the world on our shoulders. And unfortunately, sometimes people have a tendency to snap just because of the stigma of having to be strong all the time. But even the strong have moments.
Right. Well, and I want to kind of piggyback on the last question too, to say that couples can be in a lot of trouble right now because they used to have a break from each other and now they don't. So we're seeing domestic violence increase. We've been seeing child abuse increase. So we've got to make sure that we're getting help. And if you're having a problem in your relationship, seek help. There's help available for that. If you didn't get it before you got married, shame on you. But now you need to get it, because you really should get it before you have a date. So you can say, to the therapist, we don't have a date yet, so help us. Are we going to be a good fit? But we don't do that. We go when we have our date and our dress and the whole 9 yards. So now you're in it, and get some help. So the things that make men cry is very important because men are socialized to not exhibit their emotions in the same way women do. They still have them. Men are very emotional, and because they haven't been given permission to express those emotions, they're either perceived as weakness, or even the woman will say, I don't want to see you crying. And again, this is a very important topic because there are a lot of things that we found that make men cry, both internally and externally. So I did a research study. I sampled 13 men with in-depth conversations, and found that there were many things, being away from their children, having relationship issues, not having dads in their lives was a huge area for men. And so out of that, I wrote the book and then the stage play, because it was very important for men to have a voice, and for us to understand them. Women need to understand men because sometimes we don't understand you all. And I think it's important that we have the skill. Once we do understand, then it helps to change some things for us as well. So
And I also believe that once we understand a person's history,
Mhm.
because too many times we enter into it and it looks like it's the perfect situation, and then you find out later that the person, one, didn't have a father, or perhaps they had a father, but he was abusive. I myself, I didn't have a father around, so I don't know what it's like to hear my parents curse each other out. But you
Mhm.
have some people who do know that, and unfortunately, they perpetuate that into their
Exactly.
actual marriages.
Exactly. That's why you have to do your work and know, yeah, and know your trauma in order
Mhm.
for you to be able to relate to someone else in a healthy way.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, ladies, it has been a blast here talking about things that really pertain to our community and just in general on the subject of psychology. It is a subject that I am very fascinated with. And if I were not doing what I do, I would probably be doing what you guys are doing.
Not too
And
late.
That's right.
yeah,
Don't say that because we'll be bugging you.
I know it. In
Love
fact,
people to
I've
come and
got a yeah, in fact, I've even got a psychology textbook right here on the floor next to me. I bought it, even though I'm not in school, but I still love reading about Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs and
Mhm.
fraud and various other psychologists. And I always have been, an advocate of reading people who are smarter than you are, and who've done the research. And so I'm not an authority at it, but I do believe that I'm a lot farther ahead than a lot of people who aren't in it. Finally, why don't you ladies tell us what you're doing now, beginning with you, Dr. Gloria Chance.
Yeah, so let's see. We are getting ready to do the second season of the Blend Talk. So the Blend Talk show, which is a mind, body, spirit TV show for Black women. And I'm also in the middle of, and you'll love this, Dr. Morrow, I have a psychodrama that I do through expressive arts, and it is to look at the humanity around becoming anti-racism and
Mhm.
changing the minds of people by looking at the historical Black line, historical history of
Mhm.
oppression, choosing an event and walking in the shoes of that event, so that as a person who's experiencing those things, that your mind and your heart and spirit can shift. Now, I've done this, for a couple of years, but I'm actually doing it now to write a book.
In
Um,
fact, you have an event that you do as a part of your presentation, right, called Walk in the Shoes.
Exactly. And so now I'm going to take that and put it into a book. It produces poetry and other types of art. So I'm going to use the creativity and art to express who we can be as a humanity. Getting through all of this racism and becoming, hopefully, again, I'm always hopeful, becoming more human, because that's what all we're going through now. It's about race, but it really is about being human. It's about humanity. Where is our humanity?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, Dr. Morrow, tell us what you're up to now. Of course,
Well,
we know that you can't do your plays and all of that right now,
I
but you
know.
can get a lot of writing in.
Well, I'm getting ready for a table read for my film, so that's a exciting thing. Also, my very first talk show is going to happen in the fall, so we've already started shooting for that, and we'll finish up, in August to get ready for the fall for that. And I'm just really excited. It's a spinoff of my, yes, it's a spinoff of my morning that I do called Brand New Me with Dr. Gloria on Facebook Live. And so I just said, we're just going to take this to the next level and really try to help some people, bring some guests on that can help us to, navigate life. And so that's happening. And then I'm doing a lot of cultural competency, cultural humility work, trying to help us to become the beloved community. And I'm really excited in this season because, again, we've been on pause and reset. And now I've been able to use this time, like Dr. Gloria, to create and develop some things that will be helpful because we are servants, and it's a good time for us to be able to serve one another.
Hey, absolutely. And one other thing I want to mention, Eric, is especially because as a business person, I believe that, especially if you're in acting or any business, any individual, becoming an entrepreneur, especially in these times, are really important, even though they're getting hurt, significantly in our communities in terms of not having enough funding. Mm-hmm. But if anyone has a dream about owning a business, I work with incubators. One is OmniWorks, OMNIE Works, that they get funding and they offer free courses on how to build a business plan, how to, I work with them on how to create a creative business mind, and there are women business centers in every state, funded by the Small Business Administration, who also provide free technical assistance and will help you build your business. They also teach you how to get loans, which we don't do. If in the Black community, we're not comfortable with that. And even if you don't want to get a loan, just understanding how does the financing work? How do you get relationships with banks so that if you get in a jam like we're in right now, that you have options and opportunities. So I just want to encourage people. That's so important for our, our financial health.
Well, that's interesting that you mention and encourage people to go in business for themselves, because what they have to understand is this. All along, you have been a company of one. There's an author that I interviewed on my radio show many years ago who wrote a book, and that's what it was entitled, A Company of One. When I worked at CBS, I used to think that I worked for CBS. For those 6 years, I never worked for CBS. I worked for Eric J. Chambers, and CBS was my client. Mm-hmm. And so that's my mindset with it.
Right.
Even when it comes to the word boss, I never use that anymore. I used to, but not anymore. Harriet Tubman had a boss. Frederick Douglass had a boss. Right. To me, a boss, that is when you're in a place and you have no other choice. We have choices. Exactly. And what we've also found out here, doctors, is this. During this pandemic, a lot of the jobs that used to think that they could not be virtual are now virtual.
Yeah.
Even Facebook said that even regardless if the pandemic is over, the health pandemic is over by the end of the year or not, still the majority of their people are going to still telecommute. So I think that's a beautiful thing. And also, I think people are reinventing themselves and finding out that the gift was there all the time.
Exactly. That dream, that imagination.
And I love this quote by this lady named Queen of Fools. She said, your money is inside of you because that's where your creativity is.
Exactly.
And so when we bring the creativity out, and like I said, I love seeing that both of you ladies are psychologists, but I've also learned a lot more that you might be more entertainers than psychologists because you have all of these great ideas just overflowing. So you're multidimensional at what you do. And on top of that, you can identify when you do talk to someone in the entertainment industry. You can identify with whatever it is that perhaps they may be struggling with, and or what they're trying to overcome.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's going to do it for us on this Saturday afternoon, and we're prayerful that we'll be able to get a chance to do this again. Again, Dr. Gloria Morrow, your talk show coming in the fall, and it's going to be on social media, on Facebook and YouTube, correct?
Facebook and YouTube, yes.
And of course, Dr. Gloria Chance, your show, The Blend,
Yes,
Is there a date for that yet?
The executive producer is LaVonda Rouse, and I believe we're going to be sometime in August. We're going to be on a number of channels. I don't have all of the information right now.
Okay. Yeah, in fact, you and I met on the red carpet at the original blend about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And it was really a nice touch, nice looking show. And we certainly wish you the absolute best with it.
Yes.
For those of you who missed the beginning of the program, what we did is we showed a tribute to two of the giants who we just lost just in the past 24 hours. John Lewis, the representative, as well as Reverend C.T. Vivian. You know, I never had a chance to personally meet those guys, but I thank God for those guys. Again, simply because I, as a young child, the earliest I wanted to get into this industry was when I was 5 years old, watching the coverage of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And by grace, I've been able to stay the course. And at the same time, the reason why I'm not in trouble with the law is because I'm trying to vindicate the struggles of our people and vindicate the dog sickings and all of the things that they went through so that we can get to where we are. Okay, ladies, final thoughts. Dr. Gloria Morrow.
Well, I just want to thank you for having me. It's been beautiful sharing the space with Dr. Gloria Chance. And, I am just excited about this time in our lives. And I didn't tell you guys, but I do have a new ebook out called Unleashing the Secret Weapons to Your Success. So go to my website, gloriamorrow.com, gloriamorrow.com. And I'll be happy to have you share with that. And thank you so much again. Be safe, follow the directions of your local government, do what you're supposed to do.
Especially with the masks.
Yes.
Wear your
mask.
Yes, absolutely. And especially because so many of us are on the front line and we have to go out to be safe. And Eric, again, thank you for having me. And Dr. Morrow, what a pleasure. And I just want to say that, we use less than 10% of our creative minds. And I really want to encourage people to expand that. The mind's a muscle, just like our triceps. We need to work it. There are mind exercises out there online. There's so many things that we can do, because if not, we end up in negativity. We have 60,000 thoughts, up to 60,000 thoughts a day. And 98% of those thoughts are the same thoughts. And 80% of those same thoughts are negative. So this is what's going on, and we can control it, but we've got to expand our creativity. That will make us healthy.
So it's of utmost importance that we continue to use our mind. Marla Gibbs, the actress, I remember chatting with her one day, and she was telling me how, she's at like over 80 years old. And so what happens is she says she makes sure that she reads, especially like crossword puzzles on a daily basis.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Just work it out. And so you can reach me at Dr. Gloria Chance on Twitter and Instagram, and also at the musaigroup.com. Musai is Greek for muse. So my goal is to muse, or to encourage and inspire people to expand their minds through the technology of the mind, and that's with a O, MOUSAI. And just make sure that you use your mind and creativity to stay healthy.
Okay. Well, ladies, it has been a blast. And as I navigate my way back over here once again, it's been wonderful. And let's do it again soon. I had some technical things. And for those who missed it live, well, of course, you'll get a chance to look at the replay. And prayerfully, it will be a blessing and a benefit to each one of you. Again, we're going to leave you right now with the video tribute to the Representative John Lewis and the Reverend C.T. Vivian, again, two giants in the industry of civil rights and just human rights. We lost them. For Dr. Gloria Chance and Dr. Gloria Morrow, I'm Eric J. Chambers. This is the Cut Chronicles presentation of Hollywood House Call, The Psychologists.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Marching on to freedom land. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Marching on to freedom land. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to freedom land. Marching on to